Before you do any deal, it's important that you do an appraisal. And in this video here, I'm going to share with you stage 1 of my 3-stage process for doing appraisals. So if you don't watch any other video, make sure you watch this one because it's going to give you a lot of clarity on whether to say yes or no to a deal. Before you do any deal, it's important that you do an appraisal. Now, there's different types of appraisals and some people don't know where to start. So what I'm going to share with you, very simply, is my process. Now, I have a 3-step or a 3-stage process. I'm not going to share that all with you today because this will be an hour-long video. I'm going to keep it very short. I'm going to share with you my first step. So, simply, what happens is somebody sends me a deal, usually a trusted deal sourcer. I then want to decide very quickly whether I want to do the deal or not based on my own criteria, which I've covered on another video, so you need to have your own criteria. But once you've done that, very quickly saying, okay, is it in the right area? Is it within my affordability? Do I have the investors or do I have the cash? Is it the number of properties I'm building, refurbing? Is it within whatever criteria I've set? Once you've done all that, you want to very quickly, what I call back of a fag packet calculation in terms of, does this work? Because you don't want to spend hours and hours and hours and hours, because if you think about it, let's say if you're spending hours and hours and you've got 5 or 6 deals coming in every week, you can't do anything else. You're just going to be analysing deals. So I have a first stage process where I quickly analyse it. If I think it works and it's a goer, I then start talking to my deal sourcer and saying, okay, let's talk to the seller and see if there's something that can be done. Then I move on to my second stage and my third stage. By the time I get to my third stage, I'm pretty invested in the deal. But by the time I get there, I know I'm keen and willing and able to do the deal. So in this video, I'm just going to share with you basically the first step, which I think you should do. This takes probably half an hour, if that. And the more you do it, the quicker and the better you become at it. But it'll give you a good flavour and indication of whether you should look at the deal any further or whether it needs to be binned. So the first thing that I do is I look at the net saleable area. And you can do this in square feet or square meters. I just do it in square feet, okay? And I come up with a number. It doesn't matter what the number is. And once I've shared the principle with you, I am going to go through an example with you so you can kind of see exactly how it works. So that's the first bit that I do, work out how many square feet of the area can I develop. Once I've done that, then I want to work out the price per square foot. I'll put price per square foot of what I can achieve in terms of selling the particular units, and we'll just call that X2, and that's quite important. Now, if you don't know this, simply go online. There's loads of great websites. I'm not going to mention one particular one to you. I think go out there and you'll find plenty. I also speak to local agents and get a feel from them. Of course, if you're investing in a pretty tight-knit area and you've done a few deals, you'll know what the price per square foot is, or kind of ballpark area. If it's a new area for you, or if you're unsure, speak to local agents, look online. There's plenty of information which is going to enable you to figure that out. Once I've done that, then I've got that price, then I do X1 times X2, and that gives me what we call the GDV. We'll just call it X3 for now. It doesn't matter how I label these. And that tells me how much we can sell these units for. Now, I can go off on a tangent here in terms of I don't want to sell them, I want to rent them. But that comes in later in stage 3 of my process. For now, this is how much I can sell them for. Okay, that's for how much money I'm going to get. So now I need to work out the costs. So here we'll just put income, or turnover, or over here, I'll move on to costs. So the first thing that I do is very quickly work out how much is it going to cost me per square foot in order to develop. So I'll put cost per square foot, and again, if I'm building new homes, I know roughly how much it's costing me because we're doing that on a regular basis. For this purpose here, we'll call that Y 1, and that's the price per square foot. I then move on further and include something for other costs, and that usually is a percentage, so I'll put Y2 as a percentage, and then obviously you need to include a contingency. Now that obviously depends partly on how experienced you are and how well you know the marketplace. I'd say if you go with 5%, you're gonna be okay, and if you're not familiar with the market, maybe go with 7.5%, maybe even 10%. I usually go with 5%, and more often than not, based on experience, you kind of end up using that contingency. That gives you a subtotal here, so now you know what your costs are in terms of developing. Next stage, I want to work out how much it's going to cost me to acquire. So I'll put acquisition costs, and this very simply is how much you're buying the land or the property for. So I'll just put here guide price or asking price. Okay, so we'll just put again here Y4, I think we're on now. On top of that, then you may have SDLT. If you do, you need to include that in here. Y5. On top of that, if you've got any SIL or Section 106 costs, you need to include them in here. And SIL stands for Community Infrastructure Levy. Then if you've got other fees, legal fees, and other costs, surveys, valuations, etc., they would go here. And that then you work out how much that's costing you in terms of total acquisition. We then move on to, okay, where's the money coming from? And very simply, here you've got two parts. The first part is, if I actually do the development, how much is it going to cost me? So I work out first of all how long I need the money for. So this is going to be a number of months, because I work in months. I then work out the interest rate that I think I'm going to have to pay, and you put that here as a percentage. You then have obviously entry cost, exit cost. I kind of ignore them for here. I just leave it very simple, and then I work out how much money I need as a percentage, because if I can't get 100% of the funding from a bank, how much am I getting? So just put here percentage of funding, and then that figure goes in here, and that tells me what it's going to cost me to basically cash flow in terms of the loan costs. On top of that, you've bought the property or the land, so you need to figure out the acquisition financing, unless of course you're paying for it from your own pocket. If you are, all well and good. If you're not, then obviously you need to work out how much that's going to cost you. So I'll put acquisition funding. So again, you work out how much you need. So funds needed, so it could be let's say 50%. So you put that figure here, and then you work out the interest rate. That goes here, and again, like the previous one, how many months do you need it for? And that goes here. That then gives you a cost in terms of financing the particular deal. Once you've done this, you've got a kind of a good basic appraisal in terms of how the deal works out for you. So the next step is very simple. You work out the total income, which you've got right at the top, and I'm going to do this for you with an example, and hopefully that's going to kind of hit home, because I appreciate I'm reasonably comfortable with numbers. Not everybody watching this video may be, so running through this very quickly may not make sense, but I promise you it will do by the time I've finished the example for you. So income is X, then quite simply expenditure or costs equals whatever it equals, then the profit equals whatever it equals here, and then I want to work out my margin. I put that figure here because that's important. I'm working to a particular margin and I want to know exactly what that is. For me, basically, it's a 20% plus margin. If it's less than 20%, I stop there, bin the deal, and I move on. Now, some people might stop there. I go a bit further and do a further calculation. So I'm just going to run you through that right now here. But like I said, it'll make more sense when I go through it with you with an example. Now I want to see how much I can afford to buy the land for, working on a particular profit margin. So the first thing I do is work out how much profit do I want. So I've got a formula which works on profit based on the actual costs. So in here, in the box, I'll put down I'm working on a 25% margin. That will come up with a figure for how much profit I need to make from this particular deal. I then look at the total development costs, and that figure goes in here. I then work out the development finance, and that figure goes here. I then work out the acquisition costs, i.e. to buy the actual piece of land or real estate or property. And then finally I look at the finance costs on the acquisition, and this basically enables me to come to a figure here which tells me how much I can pay for the land or property in terms of the maximum amount based on the figure that I come up with here. I then do a quick formula and kind of calculation here for what the net margin is, and compare that to up here the margin on the actual costs, and see if the whole thing works. So that's what I do. And at any point where I think it's not working, especially over here, I'll stop. Like I said, this won't take you that long. If you're working in an area you're familiar with, you'll know the price per square foot in terms of selling the property, price per square foot in terms of building, because you've done other work. Finance costs you can work out. If you're not sure, you can ring a broker or a bank and I'll ask them for those costs. But pretty much all this exercise here shouldn't take you more than half an hour, if that. So you can quickly work it out. Now, the interesting bit, let's run through an example so I can talk you through the figures and show you exactly how I do it and whether a deal works or not. So let's get started. So let's have a look at the numbers now so you can see exactly how it works. And you'll see from here some resemblance, I hope, to the example and the principle I shared with you initially. So we start off first over here where you've got the net saleable area. And you don't need to worry about the blanks. I'm just going to focus on the real basic stuff here so that kind of you understand what you need to do. So net saleable area, 10,317 square feet. On top of that, how many units do we have? 8. You don't need to worry about this for now. This is to do with affordable housing. If that applies, obviously you put the figures in there. If it doesn't, you don't. We then move down to the price per square foot, how much we can sell it for. In this case, £363 per square foot. Multiply that by the total area, gives you just over £3.745 million. So now you know how much money you think you can get if you sell the properties and the market stays as you anticipate it will do. You move down to costs. And very simply, in my case here, I'll put £170 per square foot. Don't worry if in your case it's going to cost more, it's higher end stuff, it's going to cost less. It doesn't matter what the figures are. This is why you have a spreadsheet, you can change those figures. I've used 170 because that's kind of a ballpark figure that works for us. That helps me work out how much it's going to cost us to build. Again, this is linked back to the net area. I've put down 3% for professional fees. You might have 4%, 5%. Again, it doesn't matter what that number is. You've just got the formula and you can work it out. That gives me £52,000 in costs. Contingency, like I mentioned earlier, 5%. That comes in there. So my total development cost, excluding finance, is 1.89 million. Let's call it 1.9 million. So we know where we're heading with this for now. We then want to move down to acquisition costs. How much do we think we're going to pay for it, or how much they're asking for it? The guide price, 600 grand. You work out the SDLT. If you don't know how to do that, online calculator will do it for you. But if it's land, quite simply, first 150 grand, no SDLT. Next 100,000, 2%. Anything above that, 5%, and that figure there works out. If there's any sale or section 106, put that in there. Other fees associated with the purchase in terms of paying anything to your deal sourcer, legal costs, searches, that type of stuff, surveys goes in there, and that gives you the total acquisition cost, in this case 714,000. Then you got your financing costs. How long do you need the money for? 1.5 years, I've said here. How much do I want to borrow? 100%. That doesn't always happen, by the way. It can do. I've done it before, but it might not be 100% for you. For now, we'll just say 100%. What's the interest rate? 6.5%. If you want to be kind of hyper correct, then you want to include in there entry and exit cost as well. It could be 1% entry, 2% exit. So you can include that in there as a separate box, or include it in here. But if you include it in here, it isn't quite going to work because you only pay that once, and obviously the interest is payable every single month. But you can include that in here. I don't, because I kind of work it out in my head. But if you wanted to be precise, go in there. But at the end of the day, guys and girls, if your whole deal isn't working out because of the 1% interest, entry and exit fee, then we have a big problem. Because even if you don't put it in here, the deal should stack up. When you add that back in, it should make a very small difference. It's not that significant. Every cost is important. I'm an accountant. I understand that, and I'll be anal about that, generally speaking. But remember, this is my first stage quick assessment back of a cigarette packet to see if it works. So we don't want to get into the deep detail, but I'm just pointing out to you in case you wanted to. We then move on to, obviously, how much is it going to cost us to fund the purchase if we don't have the money ourselves, or we don't have an investor or JV partner. I've said 50% of the funds at 4.5%. That's going to cost me £24,000. Again, I've linked that back to 1.5 years. The eagle-eyed people out there might say, well, that's going to take you longer than 1.5 years. Because if 1.5 years is what it costs you to, it's going to take you to develop, then you're going to buy the land before, so it might take you a further 6 months. So you can add this box in here and make that longer and call it 2 years, 2.5 years, whatever you want, and that figure goes up. Again, it's very small numbers, shouldn't make a huge difference to the overall outcome. That then tells us what the total finance costs are, both in terms of development and purchase. And then I do a very quick calculation. Okay, total income, total expenditure, profit before costs. What's my margin? 25%. I'm a happy guy because I'm looking for 20% or more. 25% works incredibly well. So once I've done the margin and the profit, I then want to look at how much I can afford to pay for the land and make it all work. So like I said to you earlier, you've got the GDV. I'm working on saying how much profit do I want to make on my costs. So I'm an accountant. I look at things at least two different ways. Here is the profit margin on the costs. So I've said 25% profit margin on how much it's costing me. That comes up with £704,000 based on the actual cost of me doing the deal. Development cost, 1.8 million. Again, it's at the top of the spreadsheet. Development finance, 184 grand. We already worked that out at the top. Acquisition cost, £714,000, including SDLT, any sale, and Section 106. And acquisition finance, £24,000, £24,114 to be precise. So that then tells me exactly how much I can afford to pay for the land. And in this particular case, it says estimated land value is £223,000, and this is saying that I'm going to be in minus or negative £276,000. So I can only pay £223,000 for that land to make it work on this particular deal here. If I want to now work out that profit margin as an overall profit on the GDV, it's 6%. So this is telling me it doesn't quite work based on how much I'm paying for the land. I should be paying less for the land in order to make it work. So let's now go back up here and just quickly change a couple of numbers and see how all that works out for us. So let's just say over here that the price per square foot, for example, is £450 per square foot. And let's just make this number up here and say we're buying the land for 400,000 and see what that does to it. This is the beauty of having a spreadsheet, because it does all the calculations for you as long as you've got the formulas right. This is now saying, hey presto, we can afford to pay £1.3 million, £1.379 million for the land, and there's a nice margin there of £979,000. The profit margin therefore would be 30% overall of the GDV based on the actual costs expended. Okay, and the uplift on the value of the land, 345 grand in terms of the total, how much we paid for it and how much we've ended up with. So this tells you exactly how much you can pay for the land. If that number is negative, something needs to change, i.e. you need to drop the costs in terms of development costs, increase the GDV, price per square foot, or pay less for the land. Quite simply, you want to pay less for the land. That number works out, rather than kind of wishful thinking and thinking by the time I finish the development, the land value or the property value will go up, or I can squeeze the costs. I'm sure I can bring those down. That's wishful thinking. Yes, maybe you can, but why do you want to take that risk yourself? And if you are, there should be a higher margin for you. You shouldn't be doing that to overpay for the land. So I'd say you work with that figure there, and that's the maximum I can pay. I'm paying 400 grand based on the revised figure, so that works exceptionally well, and that's telling me I've got a nice profit of 979 grand if I buy it for 400 grand as opposed to 1.37 million. That's what I do very quickly. If that works for me, I'm going to stage 2 and starting the negotiation, and then stage 2 I go into detail of all the costs. Stage 3 I go into further detail, look at the total GDV and the cost and everything else to make sure the whole thing works. I might share that with you in a different video, but for now, check this out, try it out, see how it works. The formulas are pretty simple. You've got the basic methodology. You can copy all this and do it yourself. Let me know what you think. Any questions, comments below. If you like the video, click like, subscribe, so I can send you obviously all the updates on regular videos. And happy appraising!